suppose the music brings up the natural question, who? I am Michael Klahr. He is Mark Kisla, covering the World Series in Chicago. We are Sports Stampede, with you till 10. And just ahead of Rockin Company's Rockin CU, talk about the ranked Colorado Buffs football team and their basketball team, which is promising. Tell you happy Halloween. Here's something that's not scary. 20% off French wine and champagne. Last week we celebrated National Champagne Day on this show. Something I love celebrating, by the way, and lifting a glass to. At Argonaut Wine and Liquor, 760 East Colfax, and they are supporting they do so much in the community. They're supporting the Denver International Film Festival, one of my favorite events here in Colorado. They host lounges at McNichols Civic Center building and the C Film Center out on Colfax, which is a terrific place to go to watch films. The film festival is from November 2nd to November 13th. You can get tickets at www.denverfilm.org. And it's just an example of how the Robinson family and Ron Vaughan, how generous they are supporting important community events as they do, that we take time during this commercial to support somebody else that's a community nonprofit and a cultural institution. Argonaut Wine and Liquor. Spend your money there. Good folks at 760 East Colfax. And now it's Rockin Company's Rockin CU with Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of BuffStampede.com, joining Mark and I. Follow him on Twitter at AdamCM777. Rockin Company, historic and modern masons, general contractors, family owned and operated in Colorado, 5 decades, 2 generations. Build it with rock. Build it with Rockin Company and Zadie's Deli. I'll be down there next week with Benny Bash from The Big Show, taking him to lunch. Benny sat in for me not too long ago. When you eat delicious food, you want generous portions. I do. Cherry Creek, it's Zadie's Deli, free parking front and back, 121 Adams Street, and they cater Zadie's Deli. And Adam, we talk about a ranked Buffs team in football, just ahead of talking about some basketball questions, facing UCLA on Thursday. And later in the show, I'm going to make the case that there are 13 teams with 0 or 1 losses kind of in the running for the first college football playoff poll when it comes out at the end of this weekend. But there are 6 teams with 2 losses, and Colorado's one of them, that could play their way in.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, let's maybe talk about the Pac-12 championship. I think I'm a little bit more of a realistic goal here at this point. But, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that Colorado and Utah are the front runners in the South right now. It's certainly a wacky season in the Pac-12 for sure.
And a big game today with Utah and Washington. Buffs could be sitting alone come Thursday in first place in the Southern Conference. Mark Kisla, you have any thoughts on the Buffs being ranked again?
I think it's awesome, first off, and I do agree with Adam. You can talk Rose Bowl with the Buffs, but let's give it another year before we talk national championship. Buffs versus Alabama in the semifinal, that's not going to happen this year, but Buffs in the Rose Bowl, that could definitely happen. And Buffs versus Huskers in the Holiday Bowl, that would be a dream come true for me. I mean, I miss those bug eaters, man.
I agree. I don't think Colorado's had a good rival since Nebraska went away. Adam, before we get to basketball, how do you see this is going to be the last time we're on the air with you before the game on Thursday. I know it's a little early for your game day breakdown, but you've been so good on your predictions. You had the Buffs by 4. They won by 5 at Stanford, and we can go back through your other predictions. How do you see the UCLA game on Thursday?
Yeah, and before I jump into that, I will say, with obviously Colorado not playing today, every Colorado fan should turn into a Washington fan for, Mark brings up the Rose Bowl. You want to see, if you're a Colorado fan, Washington go through this unscathed so they can get in that college football playoff to open up that Rose Bowl for a Colorado. But in terms of this UCLA game, certainly the Bruins are kind of reeling at this point. Josh Rosen's been hurt and not playing. It sounds unlikely that he'll play next Thursday. Still a little far out to make that proclamation yet, but this is a UCLA team that their O-line has struggled, their run defense has struggled, and that's not a good recipe. We've seen in past years with Colorado that combination results in a lot of losses, and that's been the result for UCLA this season. Certainly, Philip Lindsay is going to be a big key in this football game going against that defense. You saw what Joe Williams from Utah did against them in Utah's win over UCLA. Thursday night electric atmosphere. I feel like Colorado is going to win this football game relatively easily, but UCLA's kind of had Colorado's number in close games, so you want to try to make it give yourself as much breathing room as you can in this football game.
Will Josh Rosen play?
It's up in the air at this point, but at this point, it sounds like it's a nerve issue, which is kind of a scary thing. So they got to be pretty precautious with him. I would say at this point, most likely he will not play.
With talent like that, I would be cautious. I think that's a great point. Very much excitement about the Buffs basketball team this year. I mentioned Blue Ribbon had them picked 4th in the Pac-12. The media has them behind Cal, picked 5th, and Blue Ribbon had 3 teams ranked in the top 25 from the Pac-12, ahead of the Buffs, and had the Buffs next. But with a horde of swing players, Derek White, George King, Xavier Johnson, Josh Fortune, as you've been watching practices, how many of these guys are going to start? How many are going to get significant playing time? And will they go kind of small and start Xavier Johnson as if he's a 4?
Yeah, you're going to see definitely a smaller lineup out there than you did in the past when they would play Wesley Gordon and Josh Scott together, and that's pretty typical, for college basketball. They're not going to be different for most teams in that sense. You basically have 2 true bigs with Torrey Miller in Wesley Gordon, and I know they want to redshirt Dallas Walton if they can, their 7-foot freshman, and he's actually kind of surprised me this preseason. He's still a little raw in terms of in the post offensively, but he's got a pretty good sense for defense and rebounding, and he can actually knock down some 3-point shots as a 7-footer, which definitely surprised me. So yeah, they will go a little smaller. They'll be deeper than they've been in the past. They go about 10 deep, even if Walton does redshirt. You've got Bryce Peters coming in as a freshman that can help out there in the backcourt. The thing with this team is they're going to be able to score the basketball, and they're going to put up a lot of points. And it's a stark contrast to a couple years ago when they didn't have shooters. This team, almost everybody you put on the court can shoot, but Tad Boyle has had a hard time this preseason, at least, getting this group to buy into his defense and rebounding mantra. And at his media day press conference, he opened it by saying if he had one word to describe his team, he would use the word overrated. So he's certainly sending a message out through the media. And Tad, usually keeps it real with us. I don't think he's just making that up for the sole purpose of motivating those guys. There's obviously something to that. But I think I voted this team 3rd in the Pac-12 behind. They are clearly behind Oregon. I think everybody is in the conference, and Arizona as well. But this has a chance to be Tad Boyle's best team again if they really do buy into playing defense. As Tad Boyle said, aside from the depth, which is different than the first team he had in terms of a talent standpoint, offensively, he kind of compared this team to his first team in Boulder, and he said, hey, I could never get that first team to really buy in on the defensive end. So he's doing everything he can in the preseason to try to get those guys to buy into it.
Before I throw it to Mark, one more question from me. Point guards, Collier's bulked up even further. He's a more durable body. Now Akiazili played international ball and maybe take a huge step. Is there a point guard who is taking charge here? Or, as I've been wondering, is Derek White going to wind up playing a lot of point guard for this team, which gets another one of those swing players on the floor, since that's the strength of the team?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That is, you talk about whether this team can buy in defensively and the point guard situation as the biggest question marks. And Dom Collier, yeah, he's I think, just good enough to keep that starting point guard job. And what I worry about is kind of to your point is when other teams go on runs, do they have that calming influence at point guard to settle everybody down? And I just don't think Dominique Collier's that guy. Well, we'll see if he proves me wrong. And I do think it helps to have a Derek White, and they have worked stuff where he is, the handling the ball up the court, and I don't think that's going to be his primary role, but you get in those situations where other teams go on a run, and Derek White is always in control. That's one of his strengths as a basketball player, and he can get into the lane, and he can draw contact. He can get to the free throw line, and we saw it back when Spencer Dinwiddie was at CU. That was such a huge thing. When other teams went on runs, you had Spencer Dinwiddie who could draw the contact, get to the free throw line, settle everybody down, get a couple points on the board, and I think you will see Derek White in that situation if Dom Collier proves that he can handle it. And I don't think you're going to see a big difference from Dom Collier from last year to this year. I just don't. We'll see.
Mark, you want to jump in?
You covered the point guard, and I don't. Dom Collier's a local player. the dream hasn't worked out the way Dom expected it to, the way Boyle expected it to. So this is what I want to ask. White, how many points a game should I expect? 8, 10, 15? What should be my over/under on scoring average for their ballyhooed transfer?
I'll set the over/under at 13.5, and
Okay,
he's a kid that's capable of certainly scoring more than that. I think the fact that they've got so many other talented offensive guys, George King and Xavier Johnson, pretty much everybody they're going to put on the court can put the ball through the hoop. Torrey Miller, not so much, but he even in the post can clean up missed shots and put backs and all that stuff. So they've got guys out there that can score the ball. I think there'll be nights where Derek White, if they ask him to score 25 points, he can definitely do that. But I don't think they're going to necessarily need that. But so it'll be kind of based on how everybody else is playing and how much he needs to step up game to game.
Thank you, Adam. We will pick this up, get to Greg Rogers, big defensive four-star defensive tackle, his recruiting, which is decisions coming up, and more recruiting news next week. Adam Munsterteiger, got to read BuffStampede.com for all the coverage on the Buffs, including lead up to the UCLA game. And that's Rockin Company's Rockin CU, brought to you by the historic and modern Masons General Contractors. 5 decades, 2 generations in Colorado. Build it with Rock. Build it with Rockin Company, rockandco.com. And Zadie's Deli, 121 Adams Street. They cater. Love all my business lunches are at Zadie's.